What's up, everybody? As it stands right now, um, this is not entirely true. Um, Biden or Trump will need Georgia. He'll need North Carolina, which he probably will get. Then he will need Pennsylvania, plus one of these three states that are still too close to call: Nevada, Arizona, and Michigan. And that's a tall order, obviously, but it's possible that occurs. Nevada's closer than we anticipated it to be. Um, but polling was kind of indicating that to an extent. Uh, so we'll see what happens. But as of right now, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia are still too close to call. If you guys wanted an update on where things stand in all of these races, starting out in Nevada with 86% in, Biden's lead is 0.6 points. But sorry about that. But as of right now, we have a lot of the vote left out of Clark County, which is a Biden territory, and a lot of that vote is expected to be early vote that should favor D's disproportionately compared to the in-person voting. So I would anticipate his lead, which is right now about 7.5 points. I anticipate that would like increase to roughly 10-ish points, which would, in my opinion, at least secure him the victory in Nevada, which is important because if he does that, then all he needs is Michigan. And then obviously Arizona, which was already called by a couple of, I think it was AP and Decision Desk that's already called Arizona, or it was AP and Fox News, or it was Decision Desk and Fox News. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of thing where things stand in Nevada right now. If you guys have any questions about Nevada, I'd be happy to answer them before we move on to Arizona. I wouldn't say it's safe to say that. I'd say it's probable that he will win this election. Okay, Politico has called blue Arizona. All right, there's another one. What do I think the percent chance is for Nevada? I'd give it 90-10 for Biden right now. I don't see a path to victory for Biden anywhere as of right now, honestly. Um, like if we're talking, I think he's mostly maxed out in all of these rural areas that don't give him that many votes. I mean, we're talking like there's Nye County, which gave him a 9,000 vote lead, but 88% is in there. All these other counties are not proportionally um, going to get him back into this race. Washoe County still has 89% in. Biden's got a lead there. I mean, I don't see it happening in Nevada right now for Trump. I have not heard of any substantial evidence for voter fraud. Until that happens, until I am presented with enough evidence to believe that voter fraud occurred, no, I have not heard about the voter fraud. Okay. What's your source for this? I mean, I believe you, but I'd love to know the source for that. Because if so, that's pretty important. Oh, Biden's speaking right now. Actually, I'm going to listen to that.
Later, and either tonight or tomorrow. But let me begin by thanking the press for being here and thanking everyone else. My fellow Americans, yesterday once again proved that democracy is the heartbeat of this nation. Yes, it has been the heartbeat of this nation for 2 centuries. And even in the face of a pandemic, more Americans voted this election than ever before in American history. Over 150 million people cast their votes. I think that's just extraordinary. If we had any doubts, we shouldn't have any longer. About a government of, by, and for the people. It's very much alive in America. Here, the people rule. Power can't be taken or asserted. It flows from the people. And it's their will that determines who will be the president of the United States, and their will alone. And now, after a long night of counting, it's clear that we're winning enough states to reach 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners. With all the votes counted, we have won Wisconsin by 20,000 votes, virtually the same margin that President Trump won that state 4 years ago. In Michigan, we lead by over 35,000 votes. It's growing. Substantially bigger margin than President Trump won Michigan in 2016. Michigan will complete its vote soon, maybe as early as today. I feel very good about Pennsylvania. Virtually all the remaining ballots to be counted were cast by mail. And we've been winning 78% of the votes by mail in Pennsylvania. We flipped Arizona and the 2nd District of Nebraska. Of special significance to me is that we've won with the majority of the American people. And every indication is that this is a major achievement. It's been a long and difficult campaign, but it's been a more difficult time for our country, a hard time. We've had hard campaigns before. We've faced hard times before. So once this election is finalized and behind us, it'll be time for us to do what we've always done as Americans. To put the harsh rhetoric of the campaign behind us, to lower the temperature, to see each other again, to listen to one another, to hear each other again, and respect and care for one another, to unite, to heal, to come together as a nation. I know this won't be easy. I'm not naive. Neither of us are. I know how deep and hard the opposing views are in our country on so many things. But I also know this as well. To make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as enemies. We are not enemies. What brings us together as Americans is so much stronger than anything that can tear us apart. So let me be clear. We are campaigning as Democrats, but I will govern as an American president. The presidency itself is not a partisan institution. It's the one office in this nation that represents everyone. And it demands a duty of care for all Americans. That is precisely what I will do. I will work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as I will for those who did vote for me. Now, every vote must be counted. No one's going to take our democracy away from us. Not now, not ever. America's come too far. America's fought too many battles. America's endured too much to ever let that happen. We, the people, will not be silenced. We, the people, will not be bullied. We, the people, will not surrender. My friends, I'm confident we'll emerge victorious. This will not be a victory alone or our victory alone. It'll be a victory for the American people, for our democracy, for America.
He needs to point out Trump's mistakes more.
When we win, just the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
All right. Well, that was that. I think he should have tactically and from an optics point of view, I think he probably should have pointed out the flaws in Trump's arguments in his speech last night a little bit more. I think that would have probably helped him out a lot better. I think if you're talking about trying to convince people that there is not fraud or massive voting fraud and stealing of the election occurring. What are the chances that Nevada comes through? I've already kind of touched on that a little bit. I'm pretty confident that Biden will win in Nevada. Did CNN actually just call Biden Michigan? Seriously? Oh, wow.
We have a major projection, not just a projection, but a major projection right now. CNN projects that Joe Biden will win the state of Michigan. A huge win, 16 electoral votes. Biden wins Michigan. That brings his number. Look at this. Now Biden has 253 electoral votes. Trump has 213. You need 270 to win the presidency.
Honestly, I'm just extremely excited because this means that my prediction is basically coming true. So long as he's able to flip Pennsylvania as well, which he realistically should be able to do. And then Trump wins in North Carolina and Georgia, and then Biden obviously wins in Nevada and Arizona. That means I would go 55 out of 55. That would be dank. All right, so we can now put Joe Biden or Michigan in the Joe Biden column, which puts him at 253 to Trump's 217. What is the reason that CNN has it at 253 to 213? What have they not called for Trump? I guess they haven't called Alaska or Maine's second congressional district. I think that's the 4 electoral votes that they don't have that we do. But I'm 99% sure that Trump will win in Alaska and 95% sure that he'll win in Maine second. So that's what that is. I think it's about getting as close to being over as we have been at any point so far this election. It ultimately comes down to assume that Joe Biden does win in Arizona, just like he should be expected to. Like many news networks have called for him already, including AP, etc. So if he wins there, he's at 264. And then, of course, all he would need is Nevada, which went to Clinton in 2016. I think we're getting as close to Joe Biden winning this election with exactly 270 electoral votes as we have been, which is absolutely insane. Has that ever occurred in American history? The question here, are you confident in Nevada going for Biden? I am, based on the fact that most of what the vote is left is out of Clark County, which is a big Democratic area, and most of what is left to be counted there is early vote, which should disproportionately favor Biden. So it's never occurred before that it's been 270 to 268. Because it's going to be 270 to 268 or 290 to 248, which is what I predicted. What's the closest election in terms of electoral votes in American history? Like of all time? Someone can say that. That'd be great. Because I know 2004 was like 286 to 252, if I'm not mistaken. W had 271. Okay. Yeah, it was 271 to 268, right? Or 267. That's right. That's right. Yeah, 2000 was ridiculous. I don't think we're going to have that much of an issue this time around because we'll probably get a recount in Wisconsin, which is fine and legal and fair. And Trump has every right to do that. And I see no reason why that shouldn't occur. However, I don't think a recount has. I don't think a person who was a candidate who was ahead by over 20,000 votes has ever lost a recount. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's right. And right now, Joe Biden is ahead by what? Is it? Yeah, 21,000 votes. I don't know. I don't really see it happening. in Wisconsin. It was an interesting what happened there. It happened basically like right after I ended my stream last night too. That Biden shifted, or Milwaukee came in, and then it shifted in favor of Biden really quickly. 1776 was the closest. Was it? Thoughts on Pennsylvania? Biden seems up. I mean, it's both candidates seem pretty optimistic about their chances in Pennsylvania. Biden is outside of recount territory in Michigan. Yeah. I don't think Michigan is going to be an issue when it comes to a recount. And this was anticipated too. It was always going to be that Michigan would go to Biden by a larger margin than Wisconsin. And I think what people are really just underestimating is the fact that Minnesota going to Biden by 7.2 points had massive implications on the rest of the Rust Belt. Because in a lot of polls, Minnesota was polling pretty even with Wisconsin and Michigan. So for him to win by 7 points is very significant. And that's only with 94% of the estimated vote in. And a lot of what is left is coming out of Minneapolis. So yeah, Wisconsin is a flip. Michigan will be a flip, or is a flip. And then it really comes down to PA. If you're talking about like actual chances of this election being contested, because if Biden manages to win, like honestly at this point it's like for the sake of democracy, the best case scenario would be that Biden runs the table in all of these states, because that would basically convince the American public that he actually does deserve to win this election. Which ultimately, if he wins more, if he receives more votes and enough to win the Electoral College, when all of the votes are counted, he deserves to win the election. Same way that if Trump ends up with 270 or more electoral votes, when all of the votes are counted, he deserves to win the election too. That is how elections work. It's like, that's why it's very interesting to see the stark difference in the two campaign messages between Biden and Trump. And I think that's, from an optics point of view, that's a smart idea from the Biden campaign, because he's painting the picture of, I am in favor of democracy. I'm in favor of free and fair elections, waiting until all the votes are counted. And until I see any evidence, substantial objective evidence that actually supports the idea that there was massive voter fraud, I am led to believe that Joe Biden has won this election free and fairly. But if we're talking about Pennsylvania, like what is Biden's path to victory? Well, it looked a whole lot more dire earlier. It still looks pretty iffy and sketchy at best. He's down by about 340,000 votes, which is doable. 5.7 points. It's obviously a much larger margin than I think a lot of people were anticipating in Pennsylvania. But ultimately, like we're talking Philadelphia County, only 2/3 of the vote is in there. We still have a third of the vote in. He's up by 300,000 votes, so he'll get another 150 or so thousand just from Pennsylvania alone, which drops his total lead to what? 300. Oh, it just updated a little bit, didn't it? Okay, so we're now down to just a little batch in there. 330,000, 325-ish thousand. 4.3. Is that right? 2. No, it's 5.3 points. Okay. So we got a little boost of a vote right just then and somewhere. I don't know exactly where. Oh, it came out of Philadelphia. Okay. So we now have 70% of the estimated vote in out of Philadelphia, a little over 2/3. He has a 350,000 vote lead over Trump. And there's a good chance that his lead actually extends to above 79.4% based on the fact that all of the votes that are still out there in Philadelphia are mail-in votes, which are even more D than in-person Philadelphia votes. So there's a good chance he could pick up another 150 to 200,000 votes just in Philadelphia alone, which would drop Trump's lead down to somewhere around 150,000 to 200,000, depending on what the margin is there, obviously. So then it's like, where can you pick up that 100 to 150,000? And that ultimately comes down to like, is there enough vote in Allegheny County? 80% of the vote is in, so he has about 1/5 of the vote left. Leads by roughly 85,000 right now. So if we divide that by, he could pick up maybe at the most about 25 to 30,000 votes in Allegheny. And then it's kind of hard to figure out where else he's going to pick up those votes. It could be that he picks up those votes even in Republican areas that are filled in as red right now on the map because mail-in votes actually favored Biden. That could be the case, especially in some of these counties where Trump is actually overperforming what his expectations. A lot of that could be due to the fact that in-person votes were favoring Trump, and now the mail-in votes are going to favor Biden. We'll see the margins in some of these more swing counties, like Bucks County, for example, start to tighten and favor Biden. I think there's certainly a good chance that he comes back and ends up winning Pennsylvania, and it could be by over a percentage point. I don't think this is going to be a repeat of 2000. And if so, I think if it does go to the Supreme Court, there's not a chance that they would side for Trump, for the integrity of this entire country. Yeah, I mean, I can go over Nevada one more time. We've got a 0.6 point lead right now for Biden. Again, as I've said, most of the vote that's coming in out of Clark is going to be Biden vote because it's all of the mail-in vote that is going to favor him even more than his current 7.5 point lead there. It'll be interesting. We'll see, because it should be that he ends up extending his margin in Clark County from where it is right now to about 7.5-ish points, but that remains to be seen. NBC just called Michigan for Biden. Someone said this channel is biased and calls too early. I called Trump winning in Florida and North Carolina and Georgia and Texas and Ohio, while Biden was still winning by like 2 or 5 points in each of them. So I wouldn't say I'm biased in favor of Trump. I wouldn't say I'm biased in favor of Biden either. Yep, no recount in Michigan. It's over 1%. Is it? Did it get there? Yeah. 1.2% now with 97% in, 60,000 vote lead. Can you actually see the margins when I do this? Yeah, you can. Okay, good. I'm not going to say who I personally want to win. I don't think there's any need for me to do that, but it's also very easy for me to separate who I want to win and who I actually think will win. It's very easy for me to do that. Ooh, super chat. What do you think went wrong for Gideon in Maine? First of all, I appreciate the donation. We can talk about that. What happened to Gideon in Maine? Because not a single poll favored Susan Collins. If you look at the RCP average, every single poll favored Sarah Gideon. Every single one by varying margins from 1 to like 10 points. It's ridiculous what happened here. And obviously, we have the ranked choice voting. So like this margin of lead right now, which is standing at 7.7 points, is going to tighten a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be enough because Sarah Gideon has already conceded the election. And it's like, I'm not overly knowledgeable of Maine's second as compared to Trump. I assume she's overperforming him pretty significantly, but if anybody has a link to the Senate race results out of the congressional districts, I would really appreciate that. That would be great. I would happily go over that. Someone said, even I, a Biden voter, think Wisconsin was rigged. Okay. Well, again, I haven't seen any evidence to support that. But in the main district, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I think ultimately there were just a ton of Collins Biden voters, and it shocked people. Ultimately, it's just like I don't know what to make of it. I don't know how much of an impact Susan Collins voting no on Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court nomination had on this. It could be that she would have lost if she didn't do that. It could be, but we obviously will never know whether or not that was the case. It could be that she was going to win anyways, even without that vote. She could have voted yes on Amy Coney Barrett, which she probably actually wanted to do, but ultimately it just didn't happen. Can you talk about Arizona again? Seems to be narrowing. All right, we good. Sorry about that. Anyways, someone said, super chat, thank you. I appreciate the donation. Can you talk about Arizona again? Seems to be narrowing. Yeah, it certainly does. I think when we had 75% of the vote in last night, we were standing at about a 10-point lead for Joe Biden. And that included like a 10-point lead for him in Maricopa County. And then it eventually started to like fall down to, I think it was around 7 to 8 points. And now it stands at 3.4 points. Close. It's kind of I don't know what to make of Arizona because it was called pretty early on by Fox News, and that was the first like big call for Joe Biden, and that was what really turned the tide of this election and made people realize that Trump was actually not going to win. And obviously, the Trump campaign was extremely upset about that, and they had some evidence or credibility in that argument because there are arguments with evidence that actually support Fox News called Arizona too early. But then obviously AP and Decision Desk both called it, and some other networks did as well. I don't know. It's tough because it ultimately all comes down to Maricopa County, and his lead is at 6 points right there. I think in 2018, let me actually check on this. 2018 Arizona midterms. Yeah, so Sinema won in Maricopa in 2018 with 51% to 46.8%. Which is a 3.2 point margin, 4.2 point margin. And she managed to win statewide by 2.4 points. So if we're talking about 4.2, 2.4, and here we have 6, 3.64. That's kind of running around the same for both candidates, except obviously Biden is overperforming Sinema. I think there's a good chance that kind of starts to lower in a sense. But I don't think Trump has enough of the vote left in Maricopa to make up that ground. And I think that was expected as well, with obviously Maricopa registering as many Democrats as it was. The Telegraph called Arizona for Biden too. Sorry, I just have to do something really quickly. Feel free to ask any more questions. If you guys are able to donate, then I will see your question very clearly, which makes it easier for me. But obviously, of course, you don't have to, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you guys have without that. I've already explained Nevada a few times. If you want to scroll back or move back into this live stream, feel free to do so. I have a question here. Why do you think that Ernst won and Greenfield lost in Iowa? I think ultimately it came down to the fact that Nevada was not as close as polls were indicating at all. And I think ultimately that Seltzer poll, the last one conducted before the day, was extremely accurate. It was considered the gold standard of Iowa polling, if I'm not mistaken. And they had Trump +7. And I'm not entirely sure what the final margin was. It was 7.3. I mean, they hit it right on the nail once again. And ultimately, I think that poll should have indicated very early on that Trump was going to win, and ultimately Ernst was going to win because of that as well. Because Democrats ultimately just did not overperform Biden whatsoever. They were expected to in a lot of areas, like North Carolina, like Maine, like Montana, like Iowa. And Greenfield did to an extent, but it just was not enough. Question about faithless electors. Yeah, I don't know what to make about faithless electors. It's such a gray area that I don't feel okay making any kind of comment about it. Because I don't want anything to happen, because ultimately faithless electors should not even be a thing. Like, if you like, by the Electoral College standpoint, and the reason for the Electoral College, which I can either agree with or not, is that ultimately whoever wins a state should receive those electoral votes, all of them. The election shouldn't be dependent on a few people deciding to vote for a different candidate against the will of the people. It's ridiculous. Someone said, do you think North Carolina has a chance of flipping blue still? I'm not all that confident, to be honest, about North Carolina. I'd say I'm more confident in Biden's chances in Georgia than I am in North Carolina. His lead's at 1.8 right now. I think that's actually higher than it was. Or no, wait, my bad. That's actually the Senate race. That's not the presidential race is 1.4. Okay, that's what it was last night too. Nothing has really changed. It's stuck at 95% for a long time. And I've kind of looked at things on a county level in North Carolina in terms of what is happening here. There you go. Okay. On a county level, we're talking about there's vote out there in Wake about 6%. It's not a lot. There's 5% left in Mecklenburg. These are the two biggest Democratic areas, Raleigh and Charlotte. You have Greensboro, 98% is in there. I don't really see enough vote anywhere for Biden to make up that kind of ground in North Carolina. But again, it's he doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to do that at all. North Carolina will only add on to his total but it'll be past 270. So there's not really that much use in talking about North Carolina. Ultimately, this election is going to come down to, can he win Nevada? Can he hold on to Arizona? And then Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia are just going to be adding on to that margin, whatever it is. Do I think Biden can flip Georgia? I mean, again, it's kind of the same situation. He doesn't need Florida. It would just add on to his electoral vote total above 270. It's a 1.6 point margin right now, 70,000 votes, 78,000 votes. Over 98% is in Fulton, 89% in DeKalb. I think there was kind of like a dream of Georgia flipping for a while there, which is interesting because I don't know what the forecast is now, yet Biden had a 64% chance of winning when I went to bed last night. But I don't see where he gets that vote back. That's almost 80,000 votes that I don't know where he would get. I mean, Muskogee 89%, Richmond 86%. Yeah, I mean, last night we still had like 20% coming in out of Atlanta, and that's why it tightened as dramatically as it did. But I don't see it happening anymore. NBC just called Michigan for Biden. CNN went to Biden a little while ago. Or Michigan went to Biden according to CNN for a little while now. Yeah. Guys, I know I know Michigan went to CNN. This is New York Times though. So it's like they haven't made that call yet. I'm assuming they will pretty soon. He just won on the New York Times? Oh, he did. You called it. He just did. There you go. I called it. I knew it would happen right about, yeah. So the New York Times has predicted Michigan, which is interesting because they still haven't called Alaska, even though Trump is up by almost 30 points with over half of the vote in. They should call Alaska pretty soon. Arizona, they haven't called yet. Nevada, they haven't called yet. Nevada makes sense why they haven't called. New York Times has been pretty consistent about being pretty conservatively about their calls. Florida, they were really late on, but everybody was late on Florida. I mean, I called Florida like 3 hours before any other news network did, just because I just did not see any path to victory for Trump there, or for Biden there. And ultimately, it 100% came down to Miami-Dade. Like, how ridiculous is that? I don't want this to be like forgotten about. And this is so concerning for Democrats in the future too. In Florida, a 23-point swing towards Biden towards Trump since 2016, and the most populated county in the most crucial battleground in every presidential election. Like, that is so concerning. Like, if the Senate and the House was not concerning enough, that alone should be concerning, even if Biden does win, which he probably will. It's just, yeah. Fox called Michigan. So Fox is at 264 to 214. What gave them that? 253. Oh, yeah, right. That's because they have Arizona. So they're at 264 because they have Arizona blue, which means all he needs is Nevada or one of these other states. Oh, I haven't updated that for Michigan. My bad. That makes sense. Let me do that. Means 50 out of 50. What do I think about that? I was actually looking at the Iowa House races last night, and I was shocked. But overall, I was shocked by everything that happened in the House because the Republicans have made a 5-seat gain. Nobody saw that coming. Obviously, everybody saw that the Democrats would end up holding control of the House. But if you're looking at the popular vote, Republicans are running way ahead in the House races nationwide than they did in the presidential race. And there were like so many polls that had like D plus 10 in like generic congressional polls, which is ridiculous. It just didn't occur. Axne held on to her seat, which is, I guess, was expected. Hinson unseated Finkenauer. Wasn't expected. We still don't have anything out of with Hart. I mean, she's down by what, 300 votes with 89% reporting. Yeah, I mean, these were the three races to watch in the Midwest. And Democrats held on to only one of them. It's not a good thing. What's actually the results out of California 25th? Because I think last time I checked, Christy Smith was still ahead, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, she's leading by about 3,000 votes over Mike Garcia. That makes sense. Where's Lucy McBath? Yeah, she won. Bordeaux took the lead. Okay. Yeah, that's good news for the Democrats out of the Atlanta suburbs, but that's what was expected because Georgia is definitely starting to shift towards the Democrats. There were obviously the two gains in North Carolina for the Democrats in the two redistricted races that they were going to win by safe margins. The other interesting one was New Mexico's second, Xochitl Torres. She lost by a pretty convincing margin too. It's weird in New Mexico. I didn't expect that to happen. There was also obviously Florida's 26th. Where's Florida's 27th? It'd actually be because I know Florida's 27th flipped, which no one saw coming. I don't remember where that was. Do you guys know where it is? I got a super chat up here, I think. Someone said Biden's campaign is sending out texts within the last hour asking for money, calling it Biden Fight Fund. They say it's because of Trump's threats last night. Yeah, I saw the tweet of that as well. I know that they were preparing for a while with a team of lawyers for this exact scenario, and it makes sense why they're doing that. And I think he's probably going to receive a lot of money. There's enough anger on the Democratic side. Does anybody know where Florida's 27th is? Tiny next to Miami-Dade. Where was that? Oh, here we go. Yeah, okay. With Donald Shalala. That was an unexpected victory for the Republicans. Yeah, both of these races. But Florida, what a weird state. Where did that come from? I don't think anybody saw that coming. The other thing is Oklahoma's 5th. That was expected to happen. Stephanie Bice defeating Kendra Horn. I think the Democrats holding on to that race was kind of a pipe dream. There's also Utah's 4th, which is Ben McAdams. He's looking like he's going to hold on to that race, which is big. I mean, I'm not going to call it for him yet, but that's a big win hold for the Democrats there. Abigail Spanberger is still losing with 86% in. That is very surprising. I was not anticipating Spanberger having much of an issue in VA 7th. Do you guys have any other races that you want me to talk about for the House? Georgia 4th. Did we already go over Georgia 4th? No. Hold on. Where's Georgia's 4th? Where's Georgia's 4th? Where guys, where's Georgia's 4th? Yes, I'm really confused. Where's Georgia's 4th? I'm losing it. There's Georgia's 1st. Why are their districts numbered so weirdly? 5th. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a large part of DeKalb County, if I remember correctly. Big time win for the Democrats there. I mean, that was expected. Where else do we have? Texas 23. Yeah, Texas 23 was an interesting one. What was her name? Where was that? Texas 24 that was another interesting one as well. Valenzuela's losing there. It looks like she's probably going to lose. Where was 24 again? Is also in this area, right? If I'm not. Or 23. Where's Texas 23? '23rd is West Texas. Oh, is the 23rd like the El Paso area? Oh, there we go. Okay. Tony Gonzalez held on to that race, yeah. But I mean, there are so many races that, like, yeah, Republicans were probably going to win, but there were so many races that they should not have won that they ended up winning. It goes for the Senate and it goes for the House. Katie Porter held on to her. Yeah, I would have expected that, though. She got a lot of national attention. A lot of fundraising money got funneled into her campaign too. Illinois 14th, right? Was that? I can't remember. Yeah, we've got two races in Illinois too close to call. This will probably Cheri Bustos is Wow, with 55% in Illinois 17th. She's down by a pretty convincing margin. Illinois 14th. Lauren Underwood. That's right. That was her name. She's losing. Again, this is not a race that the Democrats should lose. Once again, it's like this is coming like I don't know where it's coming from. I think a lot of people were like falsely anticipating like this Democratic wave, this big blue wave, kind of similar to the 2018 midterms. But ultimately, it came down to the fact that polling was just awfully wrong. New York's 14th. Oh God, I hate looking at New York counties. It's awful. New York's 14th is shoot. Where is New York's 14th? Max Rose is losing in New York's 11th by a lot too. That's a big one. 24th, yeah. 22nd. Claudia Tenney is destroying Anthony Brindisi. That was supposed to be a close race too. I honestly thought Brindisi was going to win that race. Why was polling so off? Honestly, it's got to a point where it's like, can we ever trust polls again? Because it's like the methodology can change as much as it's like people want it to, but at the end of the day, like you can adjust for polling as much as you want, but how accurate can it really be? How much can you trust that this person who's saying they're voting for this candidate is actually telling the truth and actually ends up voting for that person? You can just never account for that, no matter what you try to do with like all these adjustments. In your opinion, do you think Biden has Pennsylvania? Oh yeah, I also got a super chat. Thank you so much. Do you still think we can win Penn? I'm assuming that's from a Democratic perspective. If you're coming from a Democratic perspective or from a Biden supporting perspective, yes, I think you can definitely win Pennsylvania. And I covered that a little bit ago. If you want to scroll back into this video, I'll probably go over it again in a little bit, but there's a lot of votes still out there in Philadelphia and Allegheny, the Pittsburgh area, and a lot of the Philadelphia suburbs that could definitely favor Biden if those votes are mail-in, and they should be favoring him in a partisan split. I saw a tweet of the Secretary of State saying they're releasing more results out of Nevada tonight. Yeah, that would be interesting. I assume that's coming from Clark County, which is where a lot of the mail-in voting is supposed to favor Biden. And that's where most of the vote is left. So I would assume that we should be able to call Nevada for Biden sometime tonight, which should effectively win him the presidency, as long as he doesn't completely fall apart in Arizona. Someone said, could someone tell how long it probably takes before the counting is finished? Well, the Secretary of State in Nevada said that voting should be completed by tonight. And I would assume that Biden should be called, the race should be called for Biden at some point tonight in Nevada, which would put him at 270, so long as everything holds up in Arizona. But we don't expect to get results out of Arizona for a little bit. There are still votes allowed to be counted in Pennsylvania and Michigan, if I'm not wrong about that, after Election Day, because ballots postmarked before the election can still be counted after Election Day, so long as they were postmarked before Election Day. So we can get that all the way up until Friday. So if the race stays incredibly close, we could be waiting for quite a while. Why isn't AP called Michigan for Biden? I'm not sure. Biden has not won Georgia. Is that what it says on my thing here? Yeah, no, it doesn't. Never mind. We're all good. You expect Biden to at least get 278? Well, how would he get to 278? Exactly 278. I don't think there's any way for him to get exactly 278 at this point. I think the two most likely scenarios at this point are 270 to 268 in favor of Biden and 290 to 248 in favor of Biden. And that will ultimately come down to whether Pennsylvania flips. I thought that Biden already won in Arizona. Yeah, some news networks called it. So did AP, so did Decision Desk, so did Fox News. Fox News was the first two. So yes, he won Arizona, although a lot of people are saying that it's sketchy and it's not exactly safe for him quite yet. I would probably wait until we get about over 90% of the vote in before I can really confidently make a projection, just because I don't want to be wrong. Could Ossoff force a runoff? Are things getting that close in Georgia's Senate race? Because that would be very interesting. Because then you're getting to a point where Democrats with a win in Michigan would be at 48. They'll probably lose in Georgia or North Carolina. So then you're getting to a point where it's 48 to 50. And then you would have two runoffs in Georgia to decide if the vote is or the Senate is split. And keep in mind, in a split Senate, if Biden is the president, Kamala Harris would cast the deciding vote, which would mean Democrats would have control of all of Congress. But that would require, obviously, Ossoff to win and Warnock to win in that runoff, which I don't think is entirely probable. But it's interesting. Yeah, things have started to get wider in Michigan. Only 15,000 votes. Gary Peters. Who saw that coming? For it to be that close. I mean, he was always going to run pretty even, and John James was probably going to overperform Trump there. But who saw that coming? That Michigan would be this close in general. Ultimately, like, say what you want about Trafalgar Group and like how wrong they were in so many states, but in the Rust Belt, again, they kind of just hit it on the coffin. I think overall, Democrats are polls are just overestimating Democrats in the Rust Belt consistently. I'm sorry if I'm missing your questions. There's just a lot of them coming in. Feel free to like ask a question, and then if I don't answer it, like a minute later, ask the same question. You're free to do so, and hopefully I'll see it then. What am I feeling about Nevada? Slow mode. How do I even enable slow mode? How does one do that? Let me see. I don't know exactly how to do that, but I'm going to do some like popping your comment up on the screen and talking about it. What evidence do you have to support this? If you want to give me some actual evidence, I'd be very happy to talk about it, talk through it with you. But until you give me some actual evidence that Democrats are cheating in this election, then I can't support your theory. If Biden wins Georgia, are Ossoff and Warnock favored in the runoff? I think if Biden wins Georgia, yeah, you could make that argument. Although I think in general, runoffs would probably favor the Democratic candidates because Trump and the Republican president is not on the ballot. How do I turn on slow mode? Yeah, so I click on the three dots, right? And then it says manage moderators, participants, pop out chat, toggle timestamps, and then send feedback. Hold up. Let me try to do this. Give me just 1 second, guys. Someone can give me just like a walkthrough of how to turn on slow mode. That would be great. So I go to the 3 dots. Participants. Does anybody have any idea how to turn on slow mode? Please. I do not know the answer to this question. I'm going to look it up. But if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask them. Again, I'm more likely to see them if it's in the form of a super chat. Go to my live dashboard. Oh, that would make sense. Let me see. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I should. Okay. Guys, I'm sorry. I genuinely do not know where to do this. Oh, yes. Okay, how many seconds? 5 seconds? Dang. Okay, done. Should work now. Okay, we're back. We're back in action. We are back in action, I tell you. Okay. Now let's read some of these comments. Is there a path for Trump to win? Yes. The path would basically mean that he has to run the table effectively. He has to win in Pennsylvania. That gets him to 224. Obviously, if he wins in Alaska, that's 227. North Carolina, 242. 16 in Georgia gets him to 258. Even 11 in Arizona would only get him to 269. Is there is it so he's at 253, 11? No, it would only get he would only get to 268. He needs to win in every single race. Rest in the entire like country that is still too close to call. That is his only path to victory. Not yet, but he's probable to win. Again, please provide me with evidence that there is election fraud. Indiana 5th. Yeah, we can look at Indiana 5th. That was an interesting one. That was like considered one of the bellwethers, right? To like start. Victoria Spartz is up by 7 points, 7.5. Yeah, it looks like she's going to win there over Christina Hill. But I mean, that was expected to an extent, right? That's a historically Republican district. It's just that there's no incumbent, if I'm not mistaken. Biden's at 264. Yeah. That is if you count Arizona into his column. Here's the states that are too close to call, by the way. Someone asked. this is a great argument. I think there's an argument to be made that the U.S. is almost a one-party system, but it's just there's just so much gamesmanship going on in this country, and it's embarrassing to. I totally understand that, like, to the average person, like average non-American person, it's embarrassing to watch what is occurring in the U.S. because it's all just a disaster. But yeah. Joe Biden has never been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, if that's what you're referring to. If Trump wins Arizona and Nevada, somehow would he be then more likely to win in Pennsylvania? I think he's more likely to win in Pennsylvania than he is in Arizona and Nevada. So yes, if Trump wins in Arizona and Nevada, I don't see any situation in which he loses Pennsylvania, to be honest. Ryan, what states should each party focus on in the future? Well, coming into this election, the entire interpretation of the future electorate is that Democrats make gains in the Sun Belt. So that includes, obviously, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, which have already shifted to the Democrats pretty heavily from where it used to be. Texas is another state. Then even in these southern states, eventually that is where their electorate is starting to shift. Georgia is obviously a state that is shifting very quickly to the Democratic Party. That's another state they need to focus on. Florida is a mixed bag because Florida is kind of just an anomaly because it's Florida. I wouldn't really consider that much of a Sunbelt state that the Democrats need to focus on, but North Carolina is another one. So if you want like the 5 states that is like the future of the Democratic Party and like their path to victory, it's Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina. If the question is for the Republicans, it's Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. It's Minnesota too. Obviously, it's already happened in Ohio and Iowa, and it happened in 2016 with these 3 states. But it makes sense as to why Republicans are overperforming polls that much, because obviously the white non-educated vote is their biggest demographic, and that's very present here in the Rust Belt with these 3 states. I'm watching CNN, or my bad. I'm watching CNN, and Arizona has not been called. You are right. But CNN has been very conservative with their projections. They didn't call Florida for a very long time. For a very long time, when they should have hours prior. Someone said, can you please bring back the 2024 primary series? I will be doing that in a few weeks, though. What does this mean? Will Biden lock down, and for how long? I don't know what you're referring to. If you want to comment again with more specific details, then I'd be happy to answer it. Is there a chance of Arizona flipping last minute? There's a chance. Certainly. There's certainly a chance. But whether that's the most likely scenario or whether that chance is extremely high is another question, and I don't think the answer is yes to that. Why is Biden +7 in Minnesota, but only +0.7 in Wisconsin? It's a very good question. I think the argument could be made that Minnesota was just a whole lot more blue than people anticipated it to. And it really goes against the whole polling narrative, which had Minnesota kind of grouped in with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, even though it went blue in 2016, just by a very low margin. And I think the Trump campaign even spent more resources this time around in Minnesota than they did in 2016, when they only lost by 1.5 points, which is weird. I think it's weird. A lot of the races in this 2020 election is just odd and doesn't really make sense. There's no real explanation for it. Do I think Biden has a shot in North Carolina or Georgia? He has a shot. I don't think he's likely to win in North Carolina or Georgia. Coming into tonight, I didn't think he was likely to win in Arizona or North Carolina or Georgia. But obviously, there's always a chance for that to occur. We're really just kind of at a standstill right now with where we're headed. So a lot of votes are just like, I don't really know what to make of it. Like, obviously CNN and all the major networks are still talking about like Georgia, North Carolina, but like, I think we should honestly move past that at this point. I don't think there's enough in Georgia. I'm not confident enough to call either North Carolina or Georgia. I retracted both of my projections in both of those states for Trump at first. Why is Alaska still not called? That's a good question. I have no idea. I mean, polls were suggesting a tight race, but like the fact is that polls always underestimate Republicans in Alaska. It's a very reliably Republican state, and Trump's up 30% with 56% of the vote in. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Why do you think Biden has a shot in North Carolina or Georgia? Well, because there's still some vote in there that is likely to be mail-in votes, which should disproportionately favor Democrats. But again, I don't think there's enough anymore. I think there was a more optimistic chance of that occurring last night, but ultimately the margin just wasn't big enough for Biden to overcome those deficits there. Although they're closer than they were in 2016, which is a good sign for him and for the Democratic Party in the future. Yeah, I mean this was the strategy for the 2020 election. But if we're talking 2024, 2028, even ahead in like 2040, I mean the Republicans are going to have to basically maximize the white vote as much as they can, because I guess ultimately, is it true that Trump received more non-white vote than any Republican president in American history in this election? I saw some kind of source supporting that. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but I wouldn't be entirely shocked. And in that case, that's a bad sign for the Democrats in the future too, because they were counting on that vote staying in their column, and that's why they would make gains in Texas. Who knows if this did enough to lose that race? But ultimately, I think given that Biden is still running 1.45 points behind Trump in North Carolina, I don't think Cunningham was really going to overperform Biden by that much. I think if you were looking at it, maybe he could have pulled it off, but it wouldn't have been by a lot. I think it's more likely that he actually would not have won, even if that had not occurred. Is there? I haven't seen any of this. I think if this were true, I would have seen something about it. But again, I just have not seen anything substantial to support the fact there was actual voter fraud. Bad. It was there's no other way to put it other than this election was extremely disappointing from a Democrat's point of view. And I think the Republicans ultimately have a lot to be happy about. Even if they lose the presidency, I think their chances in the future, in like 2024, 2022 midterms, are a lot higher than people were giving them credit for. And I think that just speaks to the fact that ultimately Republicans always find a way to get important victories in elections, and Democrats always disappoint. It's just a recurring theme. And I don't know why that is for Democrats, but it just always seems to happen. You know, I don't necessarily see it happening anytime in the near future, but it is certainly true that the electorate, the future electorate of the Democratic Party is in the deep South. It's a lot more present there than it will be in a few years in the Midwest, that's for sure. Did he do that just now, or was this like part of his tweet storm this morning? Because I don't know, it's ridiculous. It would be ridiculous for either candidate to make claim victory in any state until the states are certified. If it's that close in a state, it's like even these like networks that project wins for these for different candidates, like ultimately that does not mean that that candidate won the election until the actual results are certified. So it's like I don't support any candidate, whether it's in the presidency, whether it's in the Senate or the House, claiming victory when it is that close and the election results have not been certified by the state legislature. How is Peters doing? He's underperforming Biden, but it looks like he should still be able to hold on to his seat in Michigan, just because I think he's up about 0.5 points right now, and that's only going to increase as a little bit more vote comes out of Detroit. Yeah, I mean, there's evidence to suggest this is why Florida went that much further into the Republican column than it did in 2016. The Cuban vote, not just the Cuban vote, but the Latino electorate in Florida in general. It's a new rumor, and it often appears with a graph. I'm not going to dive into rumors. I can't in good conscience do that, especially when it comes to federal elections, because it's so important to our democracy that we do not screw it up. And I think ultimately a lot has gone right with these elections, and I think a lot of people should be very confident in how the voting process was conducted. And I think ultimately, if the president didn't foreshadow for so long that the integrity of this election was like flawed and frauded, and that Democrats were stealing the election, I think a lot of people should be very happy with how the vote was counted, because it was counted like it always is. You know, it's like there's no evidence to support that any voter fraud occurred. Obviously, voter suppression occurs, but that's just as much on the Republican side as it is on the Democratic side, if not more. I don't know. New Mexico's second, Xochitl Torres Small. I don't know what happened to her. I was anticipating that she'd hold on to that race too, especially because New Mexico should be moving further to the Democratic side. But ultimately, she just lost, and I don't really have a good reason for why that occurred. Are there any updates out of any of the states? Pennsylvania's up to 84%, and it's 4.1 now, 5.1. Got 70% out of Philadelphia. I don't know what to make of Pennsylvania right now. I don't think he lost Texas because of his comments about the oil industry. I'm sure it didn't help, but I don't think he lost solely because of that. I think he was going to lose by some kind of margin no matter what. But yes, I do agree that those definitely didn't help. If he runs the table, if he wins in every state remaining, then yes, there's a chance for him. But that is not likely. I'm going to have to adjust how much I factor polls into my own forecasts. I definitely didn't use them as much as I would have in the past, based on the fact that I knew that they would be off to some extent. That's why I adjusted my expectations a lot, and that's why I've been right in every state so far. But I'm definitely going to have to readjust even more based on this, because this was another massive polling error, and this was the biggest polling error in American history. No, I don't think that the election is a fraud to the American people. I really do not believe that. And I think anybody who does is not thinking logically. I think they're thinking emotionally. He certainly does not look good. Even Ben Shapiro called him out for it. And when Ben Shapiro calls you out for something as a Republican president, that's definitely not a good thing. This election was the biggest polling error in American history, without a doubt. At least in modern American history, where polls were actually a thing. I think they'd be smart to do this. I think from an optics point of view, this is the most successful path forward for them. But I mean, I don't know for sure, because it's going to be interesting who they try to nominate in 2024, if Biden wins or if Trump wins. Because if it's another like Trump family member, or if it's like, I don't know who would actually be the most supportive of the Trump agenda and Trumpism in general. I think they could go a number of different ways. Even Mike Pence. I think if Mike Pence was the nominee in 2024, it would be more of a Romney style, at least from like a character point of view. Yes, this is what I've been trying to say. The future demographics of both the Republican and Democratic Party are vastly different in these two areas. How are the Democrats supposed to win back the Latino vote that they lost? I have no idea. I don't know whether or not we'll probably find this out in the following weeks, but I don't know whether this was like an outreach issue for the Biden campaign, and that's why he lost so much Latino vote, specifically in Florida, or if it was genuinely just if it was a pro-Trump or anti-Biden type of thing, or anti-socialism type of thing, especially among the Cubans. So I don't know for sure. (1948) was the biggest error. What happened in 1948? Was it really worse than this? How do Democrats bounce back and recover from this? I mean, if we're operating under the assumption that Biden will win the presidency, I think there's an issue that the Democrats could feel like they were successful when they were not, and not do a ton of reflection in the next 4 years, or at least in the next 2 years before the 2022 midterms. And that could ultimately bite them very hard in the ass if they don't do some kind of reflection and reassess what they want to do. If it were to go to the Supreme Court with a 270 Biden Electoral College victory, how would it turn out? It would depend on if there was actual voter fraud going on. Because if there wasn't, and Trump is just claiming that, then he has no legal ground or precedent to stand on. And even in a 6-3 conservative court, they would not risk like social revolution and civil war and anarchy just to give Trump another 4 years illegitimately. This is 100% the case. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do this just because they believe they were successful because Biden won. They really need to reassess what they're doing, and it's an issue. And ultimately, I think the Democrats are going to need to take a step further to the left if they want this to occur. Because I don't think moderate centrism is the path forward for Democrats at all. while I think moderate and centrism is actually the path forward for Republicans. Nevada is close, but all the remaining vote is mostly going to come out of Clark County, which should favor Biden pretty significantly. The percentage chance that Trump wins, I think it's relatively low at this point. I don't know if it's lower than, like, I'd say coming into this election, he had like anywhere from like a 10 to 20% chance of winning. Now I think it would probably still remain in the 10 to 20% chance. But that would ultimately, maybe more in like the 20 to 30% chance, just because there's a chance that Arizona could fall apart. But I don't know. I think every present election is the most important election. I don't think I can like go back to a time in American history and say that another election was more important than this one. I don't think I'd be able to say that in 2024 either. You know, I think like every year based on like presentness, every election is the most important election. Georgia now just 68,000. Did it update? Oh, wow, it did. Yeah. Okay. So we got 1.4 points in Georgia now, which is, I think that's the exact same margin as, yeah, North Carolina and Georgia are the exact same margin. Just a little bit less of the vote is in out of Georgia than it is out of North Carolina. And less people have voted in Georgia than they have in North Carolina, which is interesting. But where did that boost come from? Because DeKalb is still at 89%. It could be just mail-in ballots. It could be that Biden climbs back in Georgia. I wouldn't be stunned. But yeah, that would be interesting. Midterms are extremely important. Extremely important. And I think if Biden wins this election ultimately, and it turns out that the Democrats don't win the Senate, they're going to get blown out in the 2022 midterms, because Biden will not be able to do anything as a president with a Republican Senate. And there's going to be such a revolt. And there's already going to be Republican backlash because Trump is instilling this belief that this election is a fraud when it is not. Well, this is the case because in every election, because of rural and urban votes. If you look at California, a large part of California looks very Republican and conservative and red based on like a county level. But the fact is that more people, like millions more people, live in those little Democratic counties. It's just basic. If you didn't already know this, this is very basic, like election knowledge. More people live in urban Democratic areas, and those tend to be smaller counties, like geographically and area wise, while these rural conservative counties are usually bigger, but less people live in those counties. And that's why you see Democrats win in places like California and New York, like up big by like millions and millions of votes, even though they are very conservative in most of their rural areas. Like, for an example, like if someone didn't already know this, like, I don't know what's a great example of this. Like, we can talk about Illinois, for example. Like, Illinois is looking like it looks like it's going to vote for Biden by about 700,000 votes and by 13 percentage points. And look at how conservative it is. Like, there's all these areas for Republican votes that went red. But the fact is that Chicago voted for Biden by 700,000 votes, 72.3%. And Chicago holds, I don't know, roughly 20 to 30% of the entire population of Chicago. It could be higher actually than that. And hence, that is why Democrats end up winning in these states with big urban centers. Do I think Wisconsin and Michigan are confirmed for Biden? Yes. Because there just isn't any vote left uncounted. Wisconsin, I think, has 100% of the vote in. Michigan has 97% according to New York Times. And Biden's lead is only going to expand upon the 70,000 vote lead that he has right now. Oops. Do you feel Republicans need to rethink their strategy as well, seeing Texas and Georgia are changing to Democrat and Arizona already flip? Let me see, how do I want to put this? Republicans, they're the largest demographic in their electorate is white, non-college educated voters. It's always been the case. That is their biggest electorate. Now, obviously, we see a big trend in the Latino vote towards Trump, which is obviously significant, but I don't know how much that has to do with just this election. Ultimately, I think the Republican strategy is in the Rust Belt, and I think you've seen that pay off in Ohio and Iowa, and you saw that pay off in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in 2016. It just didn't work out this time around. But that could be for a number of other reasons. How many votes did Kanye receive nationwide? I know he received like over 3,000 votes in Kentucky and a few other states, but I'd be interested to know like where he placed. If he came in like 5th. This is an interesting take. And I don't know the exact answer to this question. Because I don't know how much of Trump improving with Latino voters has to do with immigration specifically, or whether it has a lot to do with like, especially the Cuban vote being anti-socialism in Florida. Because I know that it's not like Trump really improved among Latinos in Arizona. It's not like he really improved in Texas. I don't know. We'll find out more in the coming weeks and months and even years. I have no idea what the path forward is for pollsters. I don't know how they can gain their credibility back. I think it might take a long time if it ever. So Gary Peters is 15,000 votes ahead in Michigan, 0.3 points. Has CNN still not called Arizona's Senate race? Huh. I think Kelly's still overperforming Biden. He should be. Why do you think that the Democrats might lose Arizona? I think they might lose Arizona. That doesn't mean I think they'll lose Arizona. I mean, there's 86% in, 100,000 vote lead. The only way they lose Arizona is if, for some reason, all the votes left favor Republicans by more than anticipated. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this is interesting in Pennsylvania. There are roughly his lead is about 303,000 votes. Philadelphia has about 170,000 votes still out there. Say that he wins those 80 to 20. He takes about 100,000, 120,000 of those votes, gains about 80-ish thousand. So he cuts that lead down to what, 230-ish, 240,000. Allegheny County still has 155,000 votes outstanding. That should favor Democrats by more than the vote already has because it's mail-in votes. And obviously that favors Democrats in general. So we could see maybe like a 60, maybe like a 60-35 split in Pennsylvania in favor of Biden, in which case he picks up another, I want to say like 30 to 40,000 votes there, which cuts it down to 100,000. Then you still have a few different counties in the Philadelphia suburbs, especially with some votes still outstanding, anywhere from like 50 to 100,000 in a lot of these areas around here. So, I mean, it's possible. I'm not going to go like super in depth because I just don't have the time or energy to like count every single vote that could still possibly go to either candidate. And it's also like, we don't know. It's not worth it because we don't know exactly. Someone asked how many state results are final. Well, it depends because it's like if we're talking about like the gold standard for predictions is the AP, and I'm not sure if they've called Arizona, but I think every state has been called except for Nevada, Alaska, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. So every other state that you see here on this map has been called, except for Arizona has been called for Joe Biden. It just hasn't been called by the New York Times yet. So it's Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Alaska, and Nevada. Trump will win in Alaska. He'll probably win. Actually, no, I'm not going to say he'll probably win. He'll probably win in Alaska. He'll probably win in North Carolina. But I don't know about Georgia. Hmm. Who has most probability to reach the halfway mark? If you're referring to 270, Joe Biden does. Kanye West got 660,000 votes. I wish there was some way for me to see the live up to 20 votes Kanye got nationwide. It's certainly true that the third party vote didn't factor in like it's in 2016. Like, we didn't have any of the Jill Stein effect, which cost Biden any states. We also didn't have Gary Johnson cost Trump any states. Which state had the biggest polling error? That would be Florida, because as of right now, he's got a 3.4 point lead, and I think Biden was polling ahead roughly 2 to 3 points. That's about a 5 point swing. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. If Nevada seriously ends up being that close, that would be a big polling error. Pennsylvania, if it stays at 4.8 points for Trump, that would be a big polling error, but that's not likely to happen. Wisconsin is a major polling error, 100%. If we're talking about Biden winning by 0.6 points, he was anticipated to win by like 7 to 8 points, according to 538, I think, their polling average. Michigan, too, 1.2 points. I think he was up by even more, like 8 points in the polling average. Pennsylvania would be the case, too. Georgia was a polling error. He's up by, Ohio was a polling error. He's up by 8 points right now. Iowa was a polling error, except for some polls. Texas was an error. Georgia, not so much as of right now, which is interesting. North Carolina, also not really. I wish I could tell you guys when we know who will win, but we don't. What would because Biden could get to how many electoral votes maximum right now? If he wins in Nevada, he gets to 259. Right. Actually, does this include Nebraska's 2nd congressional district? I don't think it does. Well, I guess I don't know, because Arizona gets him to 254. I mean, 264. Nevada gets him to 270. Pennsylvania would get him to 290. North Carolina to 315 or to 305. Georgia to 321. So it'd be 321 to 217. I think very, very few people would have seen that coming. 3-7 to 2 or 321 to 217. I would have loved to see an electoral map that had 321 to 217. I don't think anybody saw necessarily Trump winning in Florida, but losing in Georgia. I saw very few electoral maps that had that. That was the Sabato crystal ball final prediction, really? Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate that. Was that the Sabato crystal ball? Because if so, that's pretty impressive. But then again, it's also not likely to occur. I still think the likeliest scenario is what I predicted. I think it still looks like the most likely result. But yeah, if anybody is on here and isn't following me on Twitter, I don't know what you're doing. I'm gonna get Twitter in the chat. Go follow me on Twitter at EPOfficial, YouTube YT, or you can just search up my name. You'll probably find it too. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm way behind with Red Eagle and LTE on Twitter. It's kind of sad. I want to get like a few thousand followers on Twitter, because that way maybe, like, I've seen all these like people say that like oh, this person got it so right, they're the only one who knows what they're doing. But it's like, what about me? What about me? What's that video at right now on views? 186,000. Ironically, the first election night I made, like full election night back in June, now hit 1 million views, and that had 289 to 249, which would have been entirely correct if I just had called Nebraska second for Biden. But that's pretty impressive for June of this year. Completely correct except for Nebraska second, although I fixed that in the latest one before election night. My Twitter is here again. We've dropped to 844 watching. I think people are just bored because there's not enough action right now. Like nothing is happening. I wish this was a little bit more exciting. Like, yeah, you can like say like, oh, it's tightening in Georgia, but like nothing has changed. I don't know why it's taking so long. Like, what is the reason for this? Oh wait, no, that's the same amount. Nothing really came in out of Nevada. Nothing changed in Pennsylvania. Although I guess his lead is below 5 points now for the first time in a long time. I can do this. Well, there are basically 4 states that are remaining, or 5 states if you count Arizona. I'm not including Alaska because Alaska will go to Donald Trump. Nevada right now, we have a 0.6 point lead for Joe Biden. But that should be expected to extend once the vote comes in out of Clark County, which is basically all of the vote that is left, and that should disproportionately go towards Biden because it's mostly mail-in ballot in the most Democratic county in the entire state anyways. And we obviously have Alaska. Not much has happened. I'm not sure when we're getting our next batch of results out of Arizona. I just I don't know. It's 3.4 points right now, but I don't see a pathway for Trump in any of these areas because he's basically maxed out in all of the Republican counties. And what's left is going to come out of Maricopa. And unless Maricopa tightens significantly, Biden doesn't have a path forward. Or Trump doesn't have a path forward there, sorry. Man, it has been a long few days. I slept for I don't know, 7 hours, but I'm dead. Arizona batch of votes at 9 p.m. and 12 a.m. Eastern. Okay. What will be the net loss for Dems in the House? As of right now, it stands at -5, but they'll probably lose in a few more. They don't look like they're going to flip any counties, that's for, or districts, that's for sure. they're probably going to lose, I'd say, anywhere from 2 to 5 more. So I think it should fall somewhere in the range of 7 to 10 negative losses for the Democrats, which obviously isn't enough for the Republicans to get anywhere near control of the House, but it's still not a good sign in regards to the 2022 midterms. That's for sure. If you guys want to drop your congressional districts down below, I'd be happy to look at them, show you guys the results there. Will Pelosi be forced to resign? If the Democrats lose the House, then yeah. But until then, she'll probably remain Speaker. $2020 is 2000, but with one more, too. It's similar to 2000 in the sense that it's extremely close electorally, but I don't think we have a situation in which any of these states was decided by 300 votes, which is a good thing, because that would be an absolute disaster. Like the closest race right now is in Wisconsin, but that's 21,000 votes, which is actually outside of the recount sort of gray area. Georgia's tightening even more, at 1.2% now, about 70,000 votes. We don't really have anything anywhere else. I'm kind of considering just ending this for now and then booting it up again. Yeah, I think I'm just probably going to do that. Wait until a new batch of results comes in. Although Pennsylvania is definitely tightening even more. It's at 4.7 points now. Is that because of Philadelphia? No, it's still just 70% there. Pennsylvania is going to slowly come in. So are the other places. But until tonight, I think I'm just going to call it for now and then return to you all by then. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this little update